The morning sun on Kepler 442b cast long shadows across the alien colony. Dr. Hyunwoo Kim stepped off the transport ship and looked up at the incredible sight before him. Towers stretched high into the sky, each one different from the others, each one reaching toward the stars like metal fingers. The Valdorian towers looked like giant crystals growing from the ground. They caught the sunlight and threw rainbow colors across the landing area. Some towers were so tall that Hyunwoo could not see their tops through the clouds. The Valdorians had built them to be beautiful and to show their power to everyone who looked at them. Next to the crystal towers stood the Nethek structures. These looked like enormous trees made of metal and stone. They had branches that spread out and connected to other towers. The Nethek believed that all life should grow upward toward the light, so their buildings grew the same way. Small pods hung from the branches where the Nethek lived and worked. The Cathara had built their towers in perfect geometric shapes. Triangles, squares, and circles stacked on top of each other in patterns that hurt the eyes to follow. Each shape was exactly the right size and in exactly the right place. The Cathara thought that perfection could only be achieved by building higher and more precisely than anyone else. "Impressive, is it not?" said Ambassador Ji-Hai Park as she walked up beside Hyunwoo. She was the leader of the human delegation, and she had been to many alien worlds before. But even she seemed amazed by what they were seeing. "It is," Hyunwoo agreed. "But I wonder why they all build the same way." Ji-Hai looked at him with curiosity. "What do you mean?" "They all build up," he said. "Every species here builds towers that reach for the sky. Do they never think to build in other directions?" Before Ji-Hai could answer, a tall figure approached them. It was High Architect Zeftel of the Valdorians. His skin looked like blue crystal, and when he moved, light danced across his surface. He wore robes that seemed to be made of the same crystal material as his towers. "Welcome, humans," Zeftal said in perfect English. His voice sounded like wind chimes ringing. "We are honored to have you join our colony. Come, let me show you the wonders we have built." They followed Zeftal to a platform that would take them up one of the tallest Valdorian towers. As they rose higher and higher, Hyunwoo could see the entire colony spread out below them. The alien buildings covered many square kilometers, all reaching upward in their different styles. For thousands of years, every species in the galaxy has understood one simple truth, Zeftal explained as they climbed. To reach greatness, one must build toward the stars. The higher we build, the closer we come to understanding the universe. The lower we stay, the more primitive we remain. Other aliens on the platform nodded in agreement. Research Director Mothkar of the Nethek was there, his bark-like skin rough and brown. His eyes were large and green, like leaves in sunlight. Next to him stood several Cathara with their perfectly symmetrical faces and bodies that looked like they had been drawn, with rulers. "Height equals advancement," Mothkar said in his voice that sounded like rustling leaves. "This is known by all civilized species. We measure progress by how high we can build, how far we can reach toward the cosmic truth. When they reached The top of the tower, hundreds of meters above the ground, Hyun-woo was amazed by the view. He could see for many kilometers in every direction. The alien towers looked like a forest of metal and crystal reaching up to touch the clouds. But as he looked down at the ground far below, something caught his attention. There were patterns in the dirt and rock between the tower bases. They were very faint, and probably no one else had noticed them because everyone always looked up, never down. The patterns looked like they had been made by intelligent beings, not by nature. "The ceremony will begin soon," Zeftal announced. "Today we celebrate another year of successful cooperation between our species. Each year we build higher and achieve more together." The ceremony was beautiful. Representatives from each species spoke about their achievements. The Valdorians had grown their tallest tower by 50 meters. The Nethek had connected 3 more branch towers to their main structure. The Kythera had completed a perfect geometric pattern that covered an entire square kilometer. Hyun-woo listened politely, but his mind kept returning to the patterns he had seen on the ground. When the other humans talked about what they hoped to contribute to the colony, they spoke of advanced human technology and diplomatic cooperation. But Hyun-woo found himself thinking about archaeology and what might be hidden beneath their feet. After the ceremony, there was a feast in one of the Nethek branch pods. The food was strange but delicious, and the conversation was friendly. The aliens asked many questions about human culture and technology. They seemed particularly interested in human space travel and manufacturing techniques. "Your species is still young," said Commander Sekthara of the Kythera military. Her voice was precise and mechanical, like a computer speaking. "But you show promise. In time you will learn to build as high as we do. Perhaps in a few hundred years human towers will reach space itself. That would be an achievement worthy of galactic recognition," agreed Mothkar. "The highest builders are always the most advanced civilizations." Hyun-woo wanted to ask why height was so important to everyone, but he did not want to seem rude on their first day. Instead, he asked about the history of the planet. "This world was empty when we arrived," Zeftal explained. "Perfect for our purposes. No primitive species to relocate, no ancient ruins to work around. A clean canvas for our architectural vision." "No ruins at all?" Hyun-woo asked. "None whatsoever," Zeftal said firmly. "We performed thorough scans before we began building. There are only natural rock formations beneath the surface. Nothing of any significance." But as Hyun-woo looked out the window of the branch pod at the ground far below, he could still see those faint patterns. They definitely did not look natural to him. They looked like someone had built something down there, something that had been buried or hidden over time. That night, in the quarters assigned to the human delegation, Hyun-woo could not sleep. He kept thinking about the patterns and about what Zeftal had said. The aliens had scanned the surface, but had they really looked carefully at what was underground? Or had they only looked for things that stuck up from the ground? He decided that tomorrow he would ask permission to do some investigating of his own. As an archaeologist, it was his job to look for signs of past civilizations. Maybe the aliens were right, and there was nothing interesting below ground. But maybe they were wrong. Maybe their focus on building upward had made them miss something important that was hidden beneath their feet. The alien towers glowed softly in the darkness outside his window, reaching up toward the stars like always. But Hyun-woo found himself wondering what secrets might be buried in the shadows they cast on the ground below. The excavation began 3 days later. Woo Jin-nam, the human engineer, had worked day and night to adapt their mining equipment for archaeological work. The machines needed to be precise enough to uncover ancient structures without damaging them, but powerful enough to move tons of earth and rock. "This is not like mining for metals or minerals," Woo Jin explained to the team as they gathered around the modified equipment. "We must be careful with every step. If there really are ancient structures down there, we do not want to destroy them before we can study them." The aliens watched from a safe distance as the humans began their work. Some seemed curious despite their earlier dismissive comments. Others looked annoyed that the humans were disturbing the perfect arrangement of their colony. "I still think this is a waste of time," muttered Commander Sekthara to Research Director Mothkar. "Humans are a young species. They do not understand that true advancement comes from building upward, not digging downward like insects." "Perhaps," Mothkar replied, his voice rustling like leaves in the wind. "But their determination is interesting. Most species would have accepted our superior knowledge without question. The first day of digging revealed nothing but dirt and ordinary rocks." The aliens seemed satisfied that their predictions were proving correct. But Hyun-woo and his team continued working, following the patterns they had seen on the radar. On the second day, they found the first artificial materials. Soon-Yi called out excitedly when her careful brushing revealed a section of smooth, dark metal that was clearly not natural. "Everyone come look at this," she shouted. "This is definitely manufactured." The metal was unlike anything they had seen before. It was completely smooth and showed no signs of rust or decay despite being buried for what must have been a very long time. When they cleaned more dirt away, they could see that it formed the edge of a much larger structure. Jinny Song, the human systems analyst, ran her scanners over the metal surface. "This material is incredible," she said. "According to my readings, it should not exist. The atomic structure is more complex than anything we know how to make." The aliens' attitudes began to change when they saw the metal. High Architect Zeftal came down from his crystal tower to examine it personally. His blue crystalline face showed confusion and concern. "This material does not match any known construction techniques," he admitted reluctantly. "Where did it come from?" "That is what we are trying to find out," Hyun-woo said. "Will you help us now?" But Zeftal shook his head. "No. This is probably just debris from an ancient spacecraft that crashed here. Nothing more. Continue your digging if you must, but do not expect to find anything significant." Despite Zeftal's continued skepticism, other aliens began to show more interest. Science Minister Velnoa sent assistants to observe the dig. Commander Sekthara stationed guards around the excavation site, claiming it was for security purposes. But everyone could see she was curious about what might be found. By the end of the first week, the humans had uncovered a wall that stretched for 50 meters in each direction. The metal was seamless, with no visible joints or construction marks. It looked like it had been formed as a single piece, which should have been impossible with any known technology. "This is not debris from a crashed spacecraft," Sun-Yi said as they studied the wall. "This is a building, a very large building." Wu Jin had been analyzing the construction techniques. "Look at how deep this wall goes," he said. "We have dug down 15 meters and still have not found the bottom. Whatever this building is, it is enormous." The aliens could no longer pretend that the humans were wasting their time. Research Director Mothkar began sending his own scientists to study the excavation. Even they had to admit that the construction was far more advanced than anything. They knew how to build. "The precision is remarkable," admitted Dr. Thekara, one of Mothkar's top engineers. Her bark-like skin was darker than her supervisor's, showing that she was older and more experienced. "Each surface is perfectly smooth to within microscopic tolerances. We cannot achieve such precision even with our most advanced tools. Jin A. Song made another disturbing discovery during the second week. Her energy scanners detected power signatures coming from deep within the buried structure. There is still energy flowing through this building," she announced to the team. "Whatever power source it uses, it is still active after all this time underground." This news caused alarm among the aliens. Commander Sekthara immediately doubled the guard around the excavation site. "Unknown energy sources could be dangerous," she declared. "We cannot allow uncontrolled alien technology to threaten our colony." "It is not threatening anything," Hyun-woo pointed out. "It has been here all along, buried beneath your towers. If it were dangerous, something bad would have happened already." But the aliens were not convinced. Several of them demanded that the excavation be stopped until the energy source could be analyzed and confirmed safe. Others argued that it should continue under strict supervision. The debate raged for 3 days, while the human team waited impatiently. Finally, Ambassador Ji-hae Park negotiated a compromise. The excavation could continue, but alien scientists would be present at all times to monitor for any signs of danger. With alien supervision now in place, the work proceeded more slowly but continued steadily. The human team had to explain every step they took and justify every technique they used. Some of the alien observers were helpful, sharing their advanced scanning technologies. Others just got in the way. "This is taking twice as long as it should," Wu Jin complained as he worked around a Cathara scientist who insisted on measuring every piece of excavated dirt. "At this rate, it will take us months to reach the main structure." But their persistence was rewarded when they finally broke through the outer wall. Beyond it lay a corridor that stretched into darkness, its walls lined with the same seamless metal. The corridor was tall enough for the largest aliens to walk through comfortably, and wide enough for several people to walk side by side. Emergency lighting systems activated automatically when they entered the corridor, proving that the power systems Jin-A had detected were not only active but responsive. The lights were soft and even, providing perfect illumination without any visible sources. "Impossible," whispered Science Minister Velnoa. Automatic lighting systems that function after being buried for thousands of years. No known technology can do this. The corridor led deeper underground, sloping gently downward at a precisely calculated angle. Along the walls were markings that Dr. Bo-Ram Choi immediately recognized as writing, though in no language she had ever seen before. "This is definitely a script of some kind," she said, running her fingers over the symbols. "The patterns are too regular to be decorative. Someone was trying to communicate information." As they followed the corridor deeper into the structure, they passed doorways leading to other passages and chambers. Each doorway was sealed with the same seamless metal, but Jin'e's scanners showed that there were vast spaces beyond each seal. "How big is this place?" Sun-Yi asked in amazement. "According to my readings," Jin'e replied, "the structure extends in all directions for at least several square kilometers, and we are still nowhere near the deepest levels. The aliens who had come to supervise the excavation were no longer skeptical. They were frightened." Commander Sekthara spoke quietly into her communication device, reporting to her superiors about what they had found. "This changes everything," she said to her fellow observers. "This is not primitive construction. This is advanced beyond anything we have achieved." "But who built it?" asked Dr. Thakara. "And why did they build it underground?" No one had answers to those questions yet. But as they stood in the ancient corridor, surrounded by technology that surpassed their own understanding, everyone realized that their assumptions about this world had been completely wrong. 3 weeks into the excavation, the team reached a depth of 200 meters. The corridor had led them through a maze of passages and sealed chambers, each one revealing more impossible technology. The walls showed no signs of age or wear, and the lighting systems continued to respond perfectly to their presence. Then they found the breakthrough they had been hoping for. "Everyone needs to see this," Wu Jin called out from ahead. He had been working to open one of the sealed doorways using a combination of human engineering and alien technology. After hours of careful work, the seal had finally dissolved away, like mist. Beyond the doorway lay the largest space they had discovered yet. It was a vast chamber that stretched so far in every direction that their lights could not reach the walls. The ceiling was supported by enormous pillars that rose like trees in a metal forest. But most amazing of all, the chamber was clearly designed as a shelter. Along the walls stood rows of what looked like sleeping pods, thousands of them arranged in perfect lines. In the center of the chamber were areas that obviously had been designed for food production, with growing beds and irrigation systems still intact. There were workshops filled with tools and equipment, meeting areas with furniture sized for multiple species, and medical facilities with equipment they could not identify. "This is not just a building," Dr. Sun-Yi Lee said in amazement as they explored the chamber. "This is a city, an entire underground city designed to house thousands of people." Dr. Min-Ho Yoon had been called in from the human ship to help analyze the energy systems they had been finding. He was their best physicist, and his readings were the most detailed they had obtained so far. As he scanned the chamber's power distribution network, his face showed complete bewilderment. "The energy source is unlike anything I have ever seen," he reported. It appears to be drawing power from the planet's core itself, but through principles I cannot understand. The efficiency is perfect. There is no waste energy at all. And according to my calculations, this system has been running continuously for over 50,000 years. The number hit everyone like a physical blow. 50,000 years. That was longer than recorded history for most galactic civilizations. It was longer than some species had existed as intelligent beings. Science Minister Velnoa had arrived to supervise the investigation personally. Her crystalline features reflected the chamber's lighting as she examined the sleeping pods with her advanced scanning equipment. "These chambers are designed for suspended animation," she announced. "The technology is far more sophisticated than our current medical systems. Whoever built this could preserve living beings indefinitely without any degradation." Commander. Sekthara was studying the layout of the chamber with her military mind. "This is a fortress," she concluded. "Not a city, but a bunker. Look at the construction. Everything is designed for defense and survival. These people were preparing to hide from something." "Hide from what?" asked Research Director Mothkar. His large green eyes showed the fear that all the aliens were beginning to feel. What could be dangerous enough to require such extreme measures? Dr. Bo-Ram Choi had been examining the writing on the walls throughout the chamber. The symbols were everywhere, covering surfaces in organized patterns that suggested detailed information storage. "I think these inscriptions are instructions," she said. "Operating manuals for the equipment, maybe historical records. If I could understand the language, we might learn who built this place and why." Jin-A Song had been working to access the chamber's computer systems. Her efforts finally succeeded when she managed to interface her human equipment with one of the control panels. Immediately, displays lit up throughout the chamber, showing information in the same unknown script that covered the walls. "The computers are still active," she announced excitedly. "All the data is intact. We just need to figure out how to read it." The aliens who had come to observe were no longer dismissive or skeptical. They were terrified. The technology they were seeing was so far beyond their own capabilities that it challenged their understanding of what was possible. This civilization was more advanced than all of our species combined, whispered Dr. Thakara. Their worst day was probably better than our best achievements. So what happened to them? Where did they go? That question haunted everyone in the eye chamber. If beings this advanced had felt the need to build underground shelters, what threat had they been facing? And if even they had disappeared, what did that mean for the current galactic civilizations? High Architect Zeftel arrived later. That day, brought down from his crystal tower by reports that he could no longer ignore. When he saw the chamber and its impossible technology, his blue crystalline skin seemed to lose its brightness. "This should not exist," he said quietly. "Advanced civilizations build upward, toward the stars. They do not hide underground like frightened animals." "Maybe they were not frightened animals," Hyunwoo suggested. "Maybe they were smart enough to prepare for dangers that others ignored." But Zeftal shook his head stubbornly. "No. There must be another explanation. Perhaps they were exiles, criminals hiding from justice. Perhaps they were a failed experiment that went wrong. Advanced beings do not choose to live in darkness. Despite Zeftal's continued denials, the evidence was overwhelming. This had been a thriving underground civilization, with technology that surpassed anything currently known. The sleeping pods showed signs of having been used recently, within the last few thousand years. The food production areas contained equipment that could support thousands of people indefinitely. As Jin'e continued working with the computer systems, she made more discoveries. The databases contained what appeared to be star charts, scientific data, and historical records. There were images that showed other worlds, other underground facilities, other civilizations. This was not just one shelter, she announced to the group. This was part of a network. There are similar facilities on hundreds of worlds throughout the galaxy. The implications of that statement sent shockwaves through the alien observers. A galactic network of underground shelters, built by a civilization more advanced than their own, designed to hide from some unknown threat. "We need to understand what they were hiding from," said Commander Sekthara. Her military training was telling her that knowledge of the threat might be crucial for their own survival. Dr. Min Ho Yoon had been studying the energy readings throughout the facility. As he worked deeper into the system, his findings became more disturbing. "The power source is not just active," he reported. "It is building up energy reserves, as if it is preparing for something. The rate of energy accumulation has been increasing over the past few decades." "Preparing for what?" Mothkar asked, but his voice suggested he was afraid to hear the answer. "I do not know yet," Minho replied. "But whatever it is, the system thinks it is coming soon." The team worked through the night, trying to understand more about the facility and its builders. Every discovery raised new questions and deeper fears. The technology was beautiful and terrifying. The construction was perfect and ominous. As dawn approached outside, far above their underground chamber, the team realized that their simple archaeological dig had uncovered something that would change everything. They had found proof that the galaxy's history was not what anyone had believed, and that threats existed which even the most advanced civilizations had not been able to overcome. The question now was whether they could learn enough from these ancient builders to avoid making the same mistakes, and whether there was still time to prepare for whatever danger had driven such advanced beings to hide in the depths of the earth. Dr. Bo-Ram Choi had not slept in 2 days. She sat in front of the ancient computer displays, surrounded by notes and translation attempts, trying to unlock the secrets of the unknown language. Jin'e Song worked beside her, using every technique. They knew to access the vast databases hidden in the facility's computer systems. "I think I am beginning to understand the basic structure," Bo-Ram said, her voice hoarse from exhaustion. "The symbols follow mathematical patterns. Look at this sequence here. It repeats every 7th symbol, which suggests some kind of numerical system." Jin'e nodded as she manipulated the display controls. "The database structure is incredibly complex. There are millions of files organized in hierarchical systems. It is like they stored their entire civilization's knowledge in here. After 3 more hours of careful work, they achieved their first breakthrough. A section of text suddenly made sense, revealing itself as a historical record." Boram's hands shook as she read the translation. "Ginny," she whispered, "call everyone down here. You need to see this." Within an hour, the entire team had gathered around the computer displays. The alien observers came too, drawn by reports that the humans had made a significant discovery. High Architect Zeftal, Science Minister Velnoa, Research Director Mothkar, and Commander Sekthara all crowded around as Boram explained what she had found. "The builders called themselves the Architects of the Deep," she began. "According to their records, they were a galactic civilization that existed over 50,000 years ago. They had colonies on thousands of worlds and technology that makes our current abilities look primitive." "But that is impossible," Zeftal protested. "No galactic civilization existed 50,000 years ago. Our historical records go back 30,000 years, and they show only primitive species struggling to achieve basic spaceflight. That is because the Architects of the Deep are not in your historical records," Boram replied. "They were wiped out, completely destroyed, and according to their files, they were not the first." Jin'ei had been working to access more of the database while Boram translated. Now she brought up a star chart that filled the entire display wall. Red markers indicated dead worlds, extinct civilizations, empty systems where thriving colonies had once existed. "This chart shows the galaxy as it was 50,000 years ago," she explained. "All these red markers represent civilizations that were destroyed in what the architects called the Great Silence. Look at how many there are." The star chart was terrifying to behold. Thousands of red markers covered the galaxy, each one representing a dead world, a lost civilization, a species that had vanished completely. The scale of destruction was beyond anything the observers could comprehend. "What caused this?" asked Science Minister Velnoa, her crystalline voice barely a whisper. Boram accessed another file, this one containing astronomical data and scientific observations. The architects discovered a pattern. Every 50 to 70,000 years, something sweeps through the galaxy and destroys all advanced civilizations. They called it the Great Silence, because after each event, all communication across the galaxy stops. All the lights go out. Captain Tae-hyun. Oh had been called down from the human ship when reports of the discovery reached the surface. As the military attaché for the human delegation, he understood strategic threats better than anyone else on the team. What he saw in the ancient records made his face pale with fear. "Show me the weapon systems data," he said quietly. If they knew they were under attack, they must have tried to fight back. Ginny accessed the military files, revealing technical specifications that made Captain O's worst fears seem small by comparison. The Architects of the Deep had possessed weapons that could destroy entire star systems, shields that could protect whole planets and fleets of ships numbering in the millions. "They tried everything," Boram translated from the files. "They built super weapons, massive defense networks, hidden fortress worlds. Nothing worked. The enemy was too powerful, too numerous, too relentless." "What was this enemy?" demanded Commander Sekthara. "What could be powerful enough to destroy civilizations this advanced?" The answer came in the form of astronomical observations and scientific data that filled dozens of screens. Jin I pieced together the information while Bo-Ram provided translation. They called them the Devourers, Bo-Ram said. According to the records, they are massive entities that travel through space, consuming the energy of entire star systems. They are not ships or machines, but living creatures the size of small moons. The scientific data showed energy signatures, gravitational effects, and space-time distortions that accompanied the Devourer's movement through the galaxy. The scale was beyond anything the observers could imagine. Creatures that fed on the power of stars themselves. The Devourers travel in swarms, Jin-A continued reading from the data. Hundreds of them moving together, following paths through the galaxy that bring them to every inhabited system. They are attracted to the energy signatures of advanced civilizations. Dr. Min-Ho Yoon had been studying the astronomical calculations in the ancient files. His face showed growing horror as he understood what the data was telling him. The pattern is predictable, he announced. The Devourers follow regular cycles, returning to previously harvested areas after enough time has passed for new civilizations to develop. According to these calculations, they are due to return soon. How soon? Asked Captain O, though his voice suggested he was afraid to hear the answer. Min-Ho checked his calculations 3 times before answering. Based on the orbital mechanics and energy consumption patterns described in these files, the Devourers should reach the outer edge of the galaxy within 500 years, maybe less. The news hit the group like a physical blow. 500 years seemed like a long time, but it was nothing compared to the time needed to prepare for a threat of this magnitude. Entire civilizations would need to be relocated or hidden. New technologies would need to be developed. Defenses that had failed the architects of the deep would need to be improved. This explains why the architects built underground, Hyun-Woo said quietly. They were not hiding from other civilizations. They were trying to hide from the Devourers. Did it work? Asked Mothkar, his leaf-like voice rustling with fear. Bo-Ram accessed more files, searching for information about the underground shelters. Effectiveness. What she found was both encouraging and terrifying. Some of the shelters survived the last cycle, she reported. The Devourers passed over them without detecting the hidden populations, but the survival rate was very low. Most of the network was eventually discovered and destroyed. Jin-A brought up technical specifications for the shelter systems. The architects learned from each attack. Each generation of shelters was better hidden, more deeply buried, more carefully shielded from detection. This facility is one of the most advanced designs they created. But even this was not enough, Captain O observed grimly. If the architects survived, where are they now? The answer came in the final files Bo-Ram accessed. The last records of the architects of the deep dated just a few thousand years after the previous Great Silence. They tried to rebuild, she translated. Small populations emerged from the surviving shelters and attempted to restore their civilization. But they were too few, too scattered, too damaged by what they had experienced. Within a few thousand years, they had died out completely. So the Devourers won, said Science Minister Velnoa. Even the most advanced civilization in galactic history could not stop them. No, Hyunwoo said, studying the data with fresh eyes. The Devourers did not win. They just did what they always do. They consumed and moved on. The real victory would be surviving long enough to rebuild after they leave. Captain O was already thinking strategically about the implications. Our current galactic civilizations are making the same mistakes the architects made. We are building tall towers, space stations, orbital platforms, all the things that create large energy signatures. We are advertising our presence to the Devourers. What you are suggesting is impossible, Zeftal said desperately. We cannot abandon our achievements, our great constructions, our reach toward the stars. That would be surrender to primitiveness. No, Hyunwoo replied firmly. It would be intelligence. The architects were not primitive when they built these shelters. They were smart enough to adapt their thinking when their old methods failed. As the team continued studying the ancient records, one thing became clear. The current galactic civilizations were facing the same threat that had destroyed countless others before them. The only question was whether they could learn from the architect's example in time to avoid the same fate. Dr. Min-Ho Yoon had been working with the facility's power systems for 3 days, trying to understand how they functioned. Engineer Da-Yun Kong had joined him after arriving on the latest transport from Earth. She specialized in ancient technologies and had experience with archaeological sites that contained unknown equipment. The power distribution network is incredible, Da-Eun said, as she studied the energy flow patterns throughout the facility. But there is something strange about it. The system is building up to something. Energy levels have been increasing steadily. Min-Ho nodded grimly. I noticed that too. It is like the facility is preparing to activate some kind of major system, but I cannot figure out what. They had been trying for hours to access the main control system when Da-Eun suggested a different approach. Instead of trying to understand the alien technology, she proposed using human engineering principles to bridge the gap between their equipment and the ancient systems. Look at this interface panel, she said, pointing to a section of wall covered with symbols and geometric patterns. The layout suggests it is designed for direct interaction. Maybe we are overthinking this. Following her instincts, Da-Eun placed her hand on the central symbol of the panel. Immediately, the entire facility came alive around them. Lights blazed throughout the chamber, displays activated everywhere, and a deep humming sound filled the air as massive systems began powering. Up! What did you do? Min-Ho asked in alarm. I think I activated the main computer, Da-Yun replied, but her voice showed she was not entirely sure. Suddenly, the largest display in the chamber lit up with a star chart of the galaxy. But this was not a historical chart like the ones they had seen before. This showed current stellar positions, with real-time astronomical data flowing across the screen in streams of alien symbols. Dr. Bo-Ram Choi came running when she heard the systems activating. As she began translating the symbols on the display, her face showed growing excitement and terror. This is a warning system, she announced. The facility has been monitoring the galaxy continuously, watching for signs of the Devourer's return. Ginny Song interfaced her equipment with the newly active systems and began downloading the astronomical data. What she found confirmed their worst fears and more. The system has detected energy signatures at the galactic edge, she reported. The patterns match the historical data about Devourer movement. They are coming back. Captain Tae-hyun Oh studied the star chart with his military training. The scale of what he was seeing was beyond anything he had prepared for in his career. How many? He asked quietly. Jin-ae continued analyzing the data. The energy signatures suggest hundreds of entities, possibly thousands. They are moving in coordinated groups across multiple galactic entry points. The warning system had been broadcasting a signal since it activated, sending coded messages to other facilities across the galaxy. Dr. Boram worked to translate the signals and discovered that this shelter was part of a vast communication network. "There are other facilities responding," she announced. "The signal is reaching shelters on dozens of worlds. Some of them are sending back status reports." The responses painted a terrifying picture. Most of the ancient shelter network had been damaged or destroyed over the millennia since the last Great Silence. Of the hundreds of facilities that should have been operational, only a few dozen were still capable of supporting life. "This is not enough," Captain O said grimly. "Even if every surviving shelter was at full capacity, they could not save more than a few million people. The current galactic population is in the hundreds of billions." High Architect Zeftel had arrived when reports of the activation reached the surface. He stood before the displays showing the approaching threat, his crystalline features reflecting the warning lights that now pulsed throughout the chamber. "This cannot be real," he said desperately. "Our civilizations have built wonders that reach to the stars. We have achieved greatness that surpasses anything in galactic history. We cannot simply hide underground like frightened animals." "The architects of the deep thought the same thing," Hyunwoo replied. "They had technology more advanced than ours, and they still had to hide. Pride did not save them." The warning system continued to provide more data about the approaching Devourers. The ancient computers had been tracking their movement for decades, watching as the creatures followed predictable paths through space toward inhabited systems. Engineer Da-un studied the technical specifications that the system was displaying. "The Devourers are attracted to large energy signatures," she explained. "Space stations, orbital platforms, massive cities, all the things that our civilizations consider achievements. To them, these are just dinner bells announcing where to why. Find the most energy." Science Minister Velnoa examined the data with her advanced scientific training. What she found challenged everything she believed about galactic civilization. "According to this information, every great civilization in galactic history has followed the same pattern," she said slowly. "They build upward, they create massive energy signatures, they attract the Devourers, and they are destroyed. The cycle has repeated dozens of times, but some survived," pointed out Research Director Mothkar. "The shelters prove that survival is possible." "Barely," Captain O replied, "and only in very small numbers. Most of the galactic population dies in each cycle. The survivors have to rebuild from almost nothing. The warning system was now providing tactical information about devourer behavior. The ancient observations showed how the creatures hunted, how they detected energy sources, and how they consumed entire star systems. They do not attack randomly, Jin-A reported, as she analyzed the behavioral data. They follow efficient patterns, harvesting the most energy-rich targets first. The biggest cities, the largest space stations, the most advanced technological centers, these are destroyed first. What about military resistance? Asked Commander Sekthara. Surely our combined fleets could mount some kind of defense. The database contained detailed records of military actions during the last Great Silence. The results were not encouraging. Even the architects of the deep, with their advanced weapons and massive fleets, had been unable to stop the devourers. Conventional weapons are useless, Captain O reported after studying the military data. The devourers absorb energy attacks and use them to grow stronger. Physical weapons cannot penetrate their natural defenses. The more you fight them, the more powerful they become. Dr. Minho had been studying the power systems of the facility itself, trying to understand how it had remained hidden during the last Great Silence. His findings revealed the key to survival. The shelters work by eliminating their energy signatures, he explained. They use advanced shielding to hide all electromagnetic emissions, heat signatures, and power fluctuations. To the devourers, a properly shielded underground facility is invisible. But our surface cities cannot be hidden, Zeftal protested. Our towers, our achievements, our monuments to progress, we cannot simply abandon them. You can, and you must, Hyunwoo said firmly. The choice is simple, adapt or die. The architects learned this lesson too late. We still have time to learn from their mistakes. The warning system provided a timeline based on the devourer's current approach vector. The leading edge of their swarm would reach the outer rim of inhabited space in approximately 500 years. The main force would arrive perhaps 50 years later. 500 years to prepare, Captain O mused. It sounds like a long time, but for a project of this magnitude, it is barely enough. Engineer Da Yun was already thinking about the technical challenges. We would need to build or restore shelter networks on every inhabited world. The construction projects would be enormous, larger than anything ever attempted. And we would need to convince entire civilizations to abandon their surface cities and move underground, added Ambassador Ji-hae Park, who had arrived with the latest group from the surface. The cultural and political challenges would be immense. The ancient warning system continued to provide data about the approaching threat, each new piece of information making the situation seem more hopeless. But it also provided something else, detailed technical specifications for shelter construction, energy shielding, and survival systems that had been refined over multiple galactic cycles. The architects left us a gift, Hyunwoo realized as he studied the technical data. They documented everything they learned about surviving the devourers, their failures and their successes, their mistakes and their discoveries. We do not have to start from nothing. As the team continued studying the ancient systems, one thing became clear. The galaxy was facing its greatest crisis in 50,000 years. But for the first time in galactic history, a civilization had advance warning of the Devourer's approach. The question was whether that warning would be enough to save billions of lives, or whether the current galactic civilizations would join the countless others marked in red on the architect's star charts. Ambassador Ji-Hai Park stood before the Emergency Council session in the largest meeting chamber of the Valdorian Tower. Representatives from every species in the colony had gathered, along with officials who had traveled from the major homeworlds after receiving urgent messages about the discovery. The chamber was filled with tension as beings who had never faced a real threat to their existence tried to understand what they were being told. "The evidence is undeniable," Ji-Hai began, activating the holographic displays that showed the astronomical data from the ancient warning system. "The entities known as the Devourers are approaching our galaxy. They will arrive within 500 years, possibly sooner." The displays showed the current positions of the Devourer swarms, their projected paths through space, and the energy signatures that match the historical records of previous Great Silence events. The data was overwhelming and terrifying. "Hi." Architect Zeftal was the first to respond, his crystalline voice ringing through the chamber. "Even if we accept that this threat exists, the solution cannot be to abandon our achievements and hide underground like primitive animals. We must build higher, stronger, better. Our towers can be reinforced, our defenses improved." Murmurs of agreement came from many of the alien representatives. Commander Sekthara of the Kithara stood to support Zeftal's position. "The Kithara military has defended our territory for thousands of years," she declared. "We have weapons capable of destroying entire fleets, shields that can protect whole star systems. We should prepare for battle, not surrender to fear." Research Director Mothkar of the Nethek added his voice to the discussion. "Our growing technologies allow us to build structures that adapt and evolve. We can create defensive networks that grow stronger when attacked. Why should we hide when we can fight?" Science Minister Vel Noah of the Valdorians accessed her own data systems and projected competing information into the chamber. "Our analysis suggests that the energy signatures could be natural phenomena, not hostile entities. We should not panic based on ancient records that may be misinterpreted." Dr. Hyun-woo had been listening to the debate with growing frustration. Now he stood and asked for permission to address the council. "With respect to all the distinguished representatives," he began, "you are making the same mistakes that every previous galactic civilization made. The historical records are clear about what happens to species who try to fight the Devourers with conventional methods." He activated new displays showing the military data from the Architects of the Deep. The records documented battle after battle, each one ending in complete defeat despite technological advantages that surpassed anything the current civilizations possessed. "The Architects had weapons that could destroy star systems," Hyun-woo continued. "They had fleets numbering in the millions of ships. They had defensive networks that covered entire galactic sectors. None of it mattered. The Devourers absorbed every attack and grew stronger from the energy." Captain Tae-hyun-oh stepped forward to support Hyun-woo's argument. "As a military officer, I understand the desire to fight back against threats. But sometimes the best military strategy is a tactical withdrawal. The ancient shelters represent a proven survival strategy. Proven failure, you mean? Commander Sekthara retorted. If the shelters worked so well, where are the architects now? They died out anyway, which proves that hiding is not a real solution. Dr. Min Ho Yoon had prepared detailed presentations about the technical aspects of the Devourer threat. He activated displays showing energy consumption patterns and behavioral analysis based on the ancient observations. The Devourers are not evil beings trying to destroy civilizations, he explained. They are following their natural life cycle, which requires consuming the energy of star systems. To them, our cities and space stations are food sources, nothing more. Then we eliminate the food sources they can detect while preserving our populations in hidden locations, suggested engineer Da-Un Kang. The shelter technology can be adapted and improved using current advances. We can save billions of lives if we start planning now. But the alien representatives were not convinced. Delegate after delegate stood to argue against the underground shelter plan. Their objections followed predictable patterns: cultural resistance to living underground, economic concerns about abandoning surface infrastructure, political problems, with convincing populations to relocate, and fundamental philosophical objections to hiding instead of fighting. Our entire concept of progress is based on reaching toward the stars, declared Prime Minister Kekdar of the Nethek. To abandon that principle would be to abandon what makes us civilized beings. The Cathara have never retreated from any challenge, added General Morthek. We will not start now, regardless of the odds. Ambassador Ji Hai tried a different approach. We are not asking anyone to abandon their principles permanently. The Devourers pass through the galaxy and move on. Historical records suggest they do not return to the same areas for tens of thousands of years. The hiding period would be temporary, perhaps only a few centuries. A few centuries of living like moles in the ground, Zeftal said dismissively. That is not temporary. That is the destruction of everything we have built. Dr. Bo-Ram Choi had been quietly preparing her own presentation during the debate. Now she stood and activated displays showing cultural and linguistic analysis of the ancient records. The architects of the deep faced the same cultural resistance we are seeing today, she announced. Their early records show the same debates, the same arguments, the same refusal to accept that their way of life needed to change. The civilizations that refused to adapt were the first to be destroyed. Her displays showed the chronological progression of the last great silence. The civilizations that maintained large surface cities and energy signatures were eliminated within the first few decades of the Devourer arrival. Those that began shelter construction early had higher survival rates. The choice is simple, Bo-Ram continued. Adapt or join the red markers on the galactic death chart. There is no middle ground with the Devourers. Specialist Junho Lim had been working with the technical teams to develop practical implementation plans for shelter construction. He presented detailed proposals showing how human underground habitat techniques could be combined with alien technologies to create vast hidden cities. The engineering challenges are significant but not impossible, he explained. We have the technology to build underground civilizations that could support billions of people. The Valdorian crystal-growing techniques could create vast chambers. The Nethek biosystems could provide life support. The Cathara geometric principles could ensure structural integrity. And human excavation methods could do the actual digging, added Wu Jin Nam. Working together, we could create shelter networks larger and more sophisticated than anything the architects achieved. But even detailed technical plans could not overcome the cultural resistance. Speaker after speaker stood to reject the shelter proposal. Some suggested alternative plans: evacuation to other galaxies, development of new defensive technologies, attempts to communicate with the Devourers, or simply hoping that the threat would somehow pass by their particular worlds. "You are all acting like children," Hyunwoo said finally, his patience exhausted. "You are so afraid of giving up your toys that you would rather die than put them away for a while." His blunt words caused an uproar in the chamber. Several alien representatives demanded apologies for the insult. Others walked out in protest. The careful diplomatic atmosphere that Ambassador Ji-hai had tried to maintain collapsed completely. "The human is right," said a new voice from the back of the chamber. Dr. Thekara of the Nethek had been quietly studying the ancient technical data throughout the debate. Now she stood to address the council. "I have spent my career studying engineering principles," she continued. "The shelter technology described in the ancient records is superior to anything we currently possess. The energy shielding alone represents advances that would take us centuries to develop independently. Even if the shelters work," Zeftal argued, "we cannot force entire populations to abandon their homes and move underground. The social upheaval would destroy our civilizations anyway." "Not if we start the transition gradually," suggested Jin-A Song. "We could begin with research facilities and emergency shelters, then expand the underground infrastructure over time. People could maintain their surface lives while the hidden cities were being built." The debate continued for hours, but the fundamental positions did not change. The aliens were unwilling to abandon their surface civilizations, and the humans were convinced that surface civilizations could not survive the Devourer attack. As the session finally ended without any resolution, Hyunwoo realized that convincing the galactic civilizations to prepare for the threat would be as difficult as surviving the threat itself. The architects of the deep had faced the same problem 50,000 years ago, and their failure to overcome cultural resistance had contributed to their ultimate extinction. The question now was whether the current galactic civilizations were capable of learning from that failure, or whether they would repeat the same mistakes that had led to so many red markers on the ancient star charts. 5 years had passed since the discovery of the ancient shelter and the revelation about the approaching Devourers. The galaxy had changed in ways that few could have imagined when the debate first began in that Valdorian council chamber. Dr. Hyunwoo Kim stood in the central command chamber of the restored ancient facility, now serving as the coordination center for what had become known as the Underground Alliance. Around him, holographic displays showed the progress of shelter construction projects on 47 different worlds, each one representing a small victory against the cultural resistance that had initially seemed insurmountable. The breakthrough. had come gradually, world by world, species by species. The first converts had been scientists and engineers who understood the technical data. Dr. Thek Ara of the Nethek had become one of the strongest advocates for the shelter program, using her influence to convince her homeworld government to begin construction projects. Status report from the Kepler 442b primary excavation, announced Master Engineer Sujin Baek as she coordinated the day's activities. She had arrived 3 years ago to lead the largest underground construction project in galactic history, combining human tunneling expertise with Valdorian crystal growth technology to create vast hidden cities beneath the surface. The excavation had grown far beyond the original archaeological site. Now it stretched for hundreds of square kilometers underground, with chambers large enough to house millions of beings. The Valdorian crystal growing techniques had proven incredibly effective for creating living spaces, as the crystals could be shaped into any configuration and provided natural lighting and climate control. The residential sectors are ahead of schedule, Sujin continued. We can now support a population of 12 million beings in full comfort, with room for expansion. The agricultural levels are producing enough food to support twice that number. Dr. Sunyi Lee had spent the past 5 years mapping and connecting the ancient tunnel networks that linked continents and even different worlds. Her discoveries had revealed that the architects of the deep had built transportation systems that spanned the galaxy, allowing underground populations to travel vast distances without ever appearing on the surface. The interworld transit system is operational on 15 routes, she reported. We can now move people and supplies between underground facilities without any surface detection. The ancient transportation technology is incredible, faster than our ships, and completely undetectable. The Underground Alliance had grown slowly, but steadily as more species encountered evidence of the Devourer threat. Independent archaeological teams had discovered ancient warning beacons on dozens of worlds, each one confirming the historical records and adding new data about the approaching danger. Not all species had joined willingly. The Cathara military had maintained their position that fighting was preferable to hiding, but they had agreed to construct strategic reserve facilities underground as backup positions. Commander Sekthara would never admit that these were actually refugee shelters, but her engineers were building them to full survival specifications anyway. The Valdorians had been the most difficult to convince. High Architect Zeftal had spent 2 years arguing against any underground construction, insisting that it violated fundamental principles of architectural advancement. But when Valdorian scientists detected the first direct energy signatures of approaching devourers at the galactic edge, even Zeftal had been forced to acknowledge the reality of the threat. The crystal-growing technology has been adapted beyond our original specifications, reported Chief Engineer Velkara, who had replaced Zeftal as the leader of Valdorian construction efforts. We can now create underground chambers that rival our greatest surface achievements in beauty and functionality. The Nethek had been more receptive to the underground concept once they realized that their biogrowth technologies could create thriving ecosystems in underground environments. Research Director Mothkar had designed underground forests that provided both life support and living spaces, making the hidden cities feel less like bunkers and more like alternate worlds. The biosystems are exceeding all projections, Mothcar reported with satisfaction. Our underground ecosystems are actually more stable and productive than many surface environments. We may have discovered a superior way of living, not just a temporary survival strategy. Captain Tae-Hyun-Oh had been appointed as military coordinator for the Underground Alliance. His job was to plan for the protection of the underground populations during the Devourer passage and to coordinate the deception operations that would make surface facilities appear normally occupied while actually being empty. The decoy systems are in place on 12 worlds, he reported. We can maintain normal energy signatures and communication patterns on the surface while the real populations live safely underground. When the Devourers arrive, they will find what appears to be thriving civilizations, but the cities will actually be automated shells. The integration of different species in the underground facilities had created challenges that no one had anticipated. Human children played alongside young Valdorians in chambers carved from living crystal. Nethek bioengineers worked with Cathara mathematicians to optimize life support systems. Cultural differences that had seemed insurmountable on the surface became minor issues when everyone was working toward the same survival goal. The social integration programs are showing remarkable success, reported Dr. Boram Choi, who had become the Underground Alliance's chief cultural coordinator. When people are focused on survival rather than status, species barriers become much less important. Dr. Min-ho Yoon had spent 5 years studying and improving the ancient energy shielding technology. His work had resulted in stealth systems that surpassed even the architect's achievements, making the new underground facilities virtually undetectable by any known scanning method. Our shielding efficiency is now at 99.7%. He announced proudly. Even if the Devourers pass directly over our facilities, they will detect nothing. We have achieved true invisibility. Jinny Song had been working to preserve the knowledge and culture of surface civilizations in vast underground databases. Her digital archives contained everything from scientific research to artistic works, ensuring that the rebuilt civilizations would not lose their heritage. During the hiding period, we have successfully archived the complete cultural databases of 37 species, she reported. When the time comes to rebuild on the surface, we will have lost nothing. Our children will inherit the full knowledge of their ancestors. The surface cities still existed, but they were slowly being transformed into elaborate decoys. Most of the population had been quietly relocated to underground facilities, while automated systems maintained the appearance of normal activity. The transition had been so gradual that many people had adapted without realizing how dramatically their lives had changed. Public acceptance ratings continue to improve, reported Ambassador Ji-hae Park, who had become the diplomatic coordinator for the Underground Alliance. Once people experience the quality of life in the underground cities, few want to return to surface living. We may have inadvertently created a superior form of civilization. Engineer Da Yun Kang had been working to expand the ancient shelter network to planets that had never hosted the architects of the deep. Her teams were building new facilities using improved versions of the ancient technology, creating a galactic network far more extensive than anything that had existed during the previous cycle. "We now have operational facilities on 73 worlds," she announced. "The network is large enough to preserve significant populations from all known species. Even if we lose some facilities to devourer detection, enough will survive to rebuild our civilizations." Specialist Jun-Ho Lim had developed training programs to prepare surface populations for underground living. His psychological adaptation techniques had proven crucial for species that had never considered living anywhere but in the open air and starlight. "Mental health indicators remain stable across all species groups," he reported. "The key is maintaining connection to the surface through monitoring systems and virtual environments. People need to feel that they are still part of the galaxy, not buried away from it." As Hyunwoo listened to the reports from around the galaxy, he felt a mixture of pride and sadness. Pride because the Underground Alliance had achieved something that seemed impossible 5 years ago, convincing multiple galactic civilizations to abandon their traditional ways of life and prepare for a threat beyond their understanding. Sadness because it had been necessary at all. Current timeline projections show the Devourer leading edge will reach the Outer Rim territories in 495 years, announced the ancient warning system, which continued to track the approaching threat with unnerving precision. Main force arrival estimated in 547 years. The numbers were both encouraging and terrifying. Encouraging because they had more time than originally estimated to complete preparations. Terrifying because the precise tracking data made the threat undeniably real. "We will be ready," Hyunwoo said quietly, looking around the chamber at representatives from species who had learned to work together in ways The huge space station called Harmony Prime floated in the darkness between stars. Inside its main hall, hundreds of alien beings sat in curved rows of seats. Their eyes, tentacles, and other strange body parts all turned toward the center of the room. Today was special. Today, they would watch the humans fail. Captain Lee Taemin stood alone in the middle of the hall. He wore his blue Earth Defense Corps uniform with pride. His black hair was cut short and neat. His dark eyes looked calm, but inside he felt nervous. Around him, aliens whispered in languages that sounded like music, clicks, or growling sounds. The Vorthan Empire had ruled this part of space for 3,000 years. They were tall, thin beings with purple skin and 4 arms. Their leader, High Architect Velthanis, stepped forward. His voice was deep and cold when he spoke. "Humans think they are smart," Velthanis said. His words echoed in the hall. "They want to join our Galactic Council, but first, they must prove they deserve it." Behind the alien leader, a massive wall began to glow. Pictures appeared showing a giant maze that looked like it went on forever. The walls moved and changed shape as they watched. Strange lights pulsed through the corridors like a heartbeat. "This is the Mindbreaker Maze," Velthanis continued. "For 3,000 years, we have used it to test the greatest minds in the galaxy. No being has ever escaped in less than 6 cycles. Most never escape at all. Taemin knew that 6 cycles meant about 144 Earth hours. That was 6 full days. He also knew that many beings who entered the maze went crazy before they died of thirst and hunger. In the observation deck above, Dr. Park Minji watched with worry in her eyes. She was Earth's chief expert on alien minds. Her long black hair was tied back in a simple ponytail. Next to her sat Engineer Kim Woo-jin, a young man with thick glasses who understood machines better than most people. Communications Officer Choi Hana sat on his other side. She had short hair and quick, smart eyes. "This is not good," Minji whispered to her friends. "The maze is designed to drive people insane. It reads your mind and uses your fears against you." Woo-jin adjusted his glasses nervously. "The walls can move in ways that should not be possible. The maze uses technology we do not understand yet." Hana listened to the alien voices around them through her translation device. "They are betting on how long Taemin will last," she said quietly. "Most think he will break down in the first hour." Down in the main hall, other alien species looked at Taemin with different feelings. The crystalline collective, beings made of living glass, thought humans might be interesting. The Aquatic Federation, who lived underwater on their home worlds, seemed curious. But the Vorthons looked sure that humanity would fail today. "The maze is alive," Velthanis explained with a cruel smile. "It learns from every being that enters. It becomes smarter and more deadly with each test. It knows how your species thinks before you even step inside." The High Architect walked closer to Taemin. "Your people are young and simple. You have only just learned to travel between stars. What makes you think you can solve a puzzle that has defeated civilizations millions of years old?" Taemin stood straight and looked the alien in the eyes. "Maybe being young is not always a bad thing," he said. "Maybe old ways are not always the best ways." The aliens in the hall made sounds that might have been laughter or anger. It was hard to tell the difference with so many species present. "Very well," Velthanis said. "The rules are simple. Enter the maze and find your way out. If you succeed, humanity joins the council. If you fail—" He did not finish the sentence, but everyone understood. Failed beings did not come back out. Doorway opened in the air near Taemin. It looked like a window made of water, but the water stood up by itself. Through it he could see the start of the maze. The walls were dark metal with strange symbols that glowed blue and green. "The maze will test your body, your mind, and your spirit," Velthanis warned. "It will show you things that are not real. It will make you hear voices of people you love, calling for help. It will try to make you give up hope." Taemin nodded. He had trained for this day for 2 years. The Earth government had chosen him because he was smart, strong, and did not give up easily. He had been a soldier, an explorer, and a problem solver his whole life. "Are there any other rules?" Taemin asked. "Only one," Velthanis replied. "Once you enter, you cannot leave the same way. You must find the true exit, up in the observation deck." Minji grabbed Woo-jin's arm. "That is new information," she said. "He cannot just turn around and come back." Hana checked her equipment. I have a communication link with the captain. We can talk to him while he is inside, but we cannot help him directly. The hall became quiet. Hundreds of alien eyes watched as Taman walked toward the glowing doorway. His footsteps echoed in the silence. He stopped at the edge of the portal and looked back at his friends. "For Earth," he said simply. Then he stepped through. The portal closed behind him with a sound like breaking glass. On the viewing screens, around the hall, they could see Taman standing in a dark corridor. The walls around him were covered in symbols that moved and changed. The air itself seemed to shimmer with strange energy. "Time begins now," Velthanis announced. "Let us see how long this human lasts." The aliens settled back in their seats. Most expected to be here for many hours, maybe even days. They had brought food and drinks. Some had even brought sleeping mats. In the observation deck, Minji, Wujin, and Hana watched the screens with intense focus. They could see their friend, but they felt helpless. Everything now depended on Taman alone. "The maze is already starting to work on him," Minji said. She pointed to the screen where the walls around Taman were beginning to glow brighter. "It is reading his mind, learning his patterns." On the screen, Taman began to walk down the corridor. Behind him, the passage sealed itself shut. New corridors opened to his left and right. The maze was alive, and it was hungry for another victim. But Taman did not look worried. Instead, he looked curious. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. It was not a map or a computer. It was just a simple timer. He pressed a button, and the timer began counting. 30 minutes appeared on the small screen. "What is he doing?" Wu Jin asked. On the main floor, Velthanis laughed. "The human thinks he can solve our maze in 30 minutes. How amusing. Even our greatest architects need days to understand its basic structure." But Taman was not trying to understand the maze the way others had. He was looking at it in a completely different way. And that difference would change everything.